You know, the Bible, according to the Guinness World Records, it's the best-selling book of all time. We're talking somewhere between 5 and 7 billion copies sold. And you don't have to be a believer to know the stories, right? Noah's Ark, David and Goliath, they're just woven into the fabric of our global culture. And for centuries, the debate has raged. Are these stories history, or are they just myth? But get this, in recent years, there's been a stunning twist in this whole debate. Researchers, using the tools of modern science, have started finding some really compelling evidence that suggests a lot of these famous events, well, they might have actually happened. Not as miracles, but as real observable phenomena that left a deep mark on our planet and on our collective memory. So, that's what we're going to get into. What happens when we look at these timeless tales through the lens of modern geology, astronomy, and archaeology? When we lift that ancient veil, what are we going to find? Okay, let's dive in. All right, let's start with a bang. Two of the most dramatic stories of destruction you can imagine. Tales of flood and fire sent from on high. Our first case file looks at these epic natural disasters and the powerful geological forces that just might explain them. Okay, so Noah's flood. We all know the story, right? For generations, it was considered pure myth. But that all changed around the year 2000. Two geologists from Columbia University were studying core samples from the bottom of the Black Sea, and they found something weird, something that just shouldn't be there. Freshwater shells and old river mud buried deep beneath the saltwater seabed. And that led them to a wild hypothesis. What if the Black Sea used to be a freshwater lake? Their theory goes something like this. Around 10,000 years ago, as the last ice age was ending, the glaciers melted and global sea levels started to rise. Eventually, the Mediterranean Sea got so high it broke through a natural land dam right where the Bosphorus Strait is today. And what happened next is just mind-blowing. The result was this waterfall of truly biblical proportions pouring into the Black Sea basin with a force over 200 times greater than Niagara Falls. And here's where it gets really wild. The famed oceanographer Robert Ballard, yep, the same guy who found the Titanic, took a submersible down there and actually found the old shoreline of the ancient lake. He discovered man-made structures, stone tools, pottery, all perfectly preserved underwater. And get this, carbon dating showed that all the freshwater shells died at the exact same time. It was proof of a sudden, catastrophic flood that would have wiped out entire civilizations, and to the people who lived through it, would have absolutely felt like the end of the world. Okay, so from a world-ending flood to a rain of fire from the sky, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah tells of two cities just obliterated by God for their wickedness. And for a long time, it was seen as just a cautionary tale. But then, archaeologists started digging at a Bronze Age city called Tal el-Hammam in the Jordan Valley, and they found evidence of some mysterious, high-energy event that completely wiped it off the map around 1650 BCE. The leading theory? It wasn't a war, it wasn't an earthquake, and it wasn't a volcano. It was a cosmic airburst. To get your head around this, just think about the Tunguska event back in 1908 in Siberia, where a meteor exploded in the atmosphere with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. It flattened nearly 1,000 square miles of forest. Researchers think something like that, but maybe even stronger, happened right over Tal el-Hammam. And the evidence they found at the site, honestly, it's just staggering. They found a 5-foot thick layer of ash, where pottery had been melted into glass. Mud bricks had literally boiled, and human bones were just blasted into tiny fragments. They also found something called shocked quartz, which is a mineral fracture that can only form under immense, instantaneous pressure. And to top it all off, the soil became so salty, probably because the airburst vaporized part of the Dead Sea, that nothing could grow there for 700 years. An instantaneous, city-leveling blast of heat and pressure. Does that sound familiar? All right, for our next case file, let's look at the 10 plagues of Egypt. Now, what if they weren't 10 separate supernatural acts at all? What if instead they were one catastrophic ecological domino effect, all kicked off by a single climate event? Okay, stick with me here, because this is like an incredible ecological detective story. It all starts with a sudden climate shift about 3,000 years ago that causes a massive drought. The mighty Nile River slows to a muddy crawl, which allows a toxic red algae to bloom. That's plague number 1, water turning to blood. This kills the fish, which forces the frogs ashore, where they die. Well, without frogs to eat them, insect populations, lice and flies, explode. That's plagues 2, 3, and 4. These insects then spread diseases to livestock and people, plagues 5 and 6. Now, right around the same time, the massive Thera volcano erupts on the island of Santorini. The ash in the atmosphere could have caused crazy weather, like freak hailstorms, blocked out the sun, and created the perfect humid conditions for a locust swarm. Plague 7, 8, and 9. And finally, with food so scarce, people were forced to eat stored grain, which could have been contaminated by mold from that initial algae bloom. The firstborn sons, who by tradition got the first and biggest portion of food, would have received a fatal dose. It's a terrifying, but totally plausible, cascade of natural disasters. Okay, so we've seen how massive geological and climate events could be behind some of these stories. But what about the people, the places? Let's shift our investigation now to archaeology, to physical artifacts that seem to point to the real existence of legendary heroes and towering structures. David and Goliath, the ultimate underdog story, right? For the longest time, most scholars just assumed both characters were purely allegorical. But in 1993, a stone slab called the Tel Dan stele was found. It's from the 9th century BCE, and it mentions defeating a king from the House of David. This was the first proof outside the Bible for King David's dynasty. Then, in 2005, at the ancient city of Gath, Goliath's biblical hometown, archaeologists found this little piece of pottery, and etched right on it was a name common to that area at that time: Goliath. And what about the Tower of Babel? You know, the story of humanity building a tower so high it angers God, who then confuses everyone's language. Seems like a classic myth, right? Well, maybe not entirely. Take a look at this ancient Babylonian tablet. It describes the restoration of a real structure in Babylon, a massive ziggurat called the Etemenenki. I mean, when you put them side by side, the similarities are just uncanny. The Bible says the Tower of Babel was built with brick and bitumen. The tablet says the Etemenenki was built with asphalt and bricks. The Bible says its top was meant to reach the heavens. The tablet quotes King Nebuchadnezzar saying he would raise its top to heaven. And here's the kicker. The Bible says God confused the languages. The tablet says the real tower was built by laborers from distant lands, people captured in Babylon's wars who all would have spoken different languages. It's very possible that the captive Israelites saw this massive multinational construction project and wove it into their own story about where different languages came from. So what does all of this mean? And this is a really important point. The science doesn't necessarily prove the supernatural part of these stories. It doesn't prove divine intervention. What it does is bridge the gap between myth and plausible history. It suggests that these ancient tales might just be the preserved memories of real, world-altering events that happened to real people. Which, of course, leads us to the biggest question of all. Let's just take the Great Flood story. A world-ending deluge isn't just in the Bible. You find it in ancient Mesopotamia, in Greek and Roman myths, with the Aztecs and Mayans, in India, China, all over the world. How did so many separate cultures, many of whom had never even met, all come up with such a similar, specific story? When you really think about it, there are two huge possibilities, and both are pretty mind-blowing. The first is that as the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, different cultures all over the planet independently experienced their own terrifying floods and recorded that trauma in their foundational myths. The second idea is maybe even more profound, that a single ancient civilization experienced one massive cataclysm, and as its survivors scattered across the globe, they carried that core memory with them, a story that evolved over thousands of years into the many flood myths we know today. These ancient stories, they've survived for thousands of years, passed down as articles of faith. But now, science is giving us a new way to read them, not as proof of the supernatural, but as echoes of real human experiences with the awesome and sometimes terrifying power of the natural world. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Where does the memory of a real event end and the story of a divine one begin?